Hi there and welcome to Black and Azul. We are a episodes, if you will, old. Charles Wollin with you, Alex Morgan, Joel Soria. Jamin Moore is going to join us later in the show tonight. But a lot of news coming out of the San Jose Earthquakes this evening. Cristian Espinoza will not play against Colorado this weekend after a horror challenge by a GAM from Columbus, and Anibal Godoy traded to Nashville Soccer Club next year. But let's start with Espinoza. Let's start with this challenge. Initial reaction, if you saw it, I mean, it's absolutely horrific, Joel.
Yeah, I think we actually have a snapshot of the actual sequence of when it happened. Grisly challenge from a GAM on Espinoza. As you can tell, as our producer says, he was trying to end his career. That's what he was really going for, whether it was intentional or not. That's certainly how it played out. And this deserved a straight red. Unfortunately, neither Disco or MLS intervened whatsoever. A GAM, gets away with it. The crew get away with it. Everything goes on, except now the Quakes have to play without Espinoza this Saturday.
And look, I don't usually like to hark about referees. I think it's superfluous most of the time. But this was a horrific challenge, and I think it's surprising it wasn't addressed by VAR. And I think it's shocking that it wasn't addressed by the disciplinary committee. It just came out, no word about a GAM, no punishment retroactively. And I think we have a quote from Matías Almeyda standing up for his player and speaking out in surprise.
Yeah, Matías Almeyda says, "We are seeing because he was saved from being fractured by very little. Really, that worries us because Cristian is one of the players that takes most of the hits and one is always positioned to not give in to attention and react. I always say that soccer defends itself as it defends Vela, Ibrahimovic, but it also can defend an Espinoza, a Judson, for the benefit of soccer, not for the careers they've had. Really, it makes me angry because there is no equality. Surely the player, Espinoza, will miss our next game. Today we have a player out and 2 less points. Hopefully this doesn't happen again because we regret Espinoza's situation, who's really important to us, yet suffered a lot of fouls that game. We save all of the images, and at some point we're going to have to do what we have to do with the images. We don't want benefits. We want equality." So, coming from Matías Almeyda, obviously not a happy camper, clearly, with this whatsoever. I mean, he's not asking for anything out of the ordinary here. He's saying what he feels, and he's also comparing this against Carlos Vela and an Ibrahimovic and saying, Espinoza, one of our best players, if not our best player this season, isn't defended by referees. You've seen managers do this in European football. You've seen managers do this across the world. You haven't seen it too much in Major League Soccer, but here's Matías Almeyda standing up for his guy.
Absolutely. It's a candidness that we haven't seen before in this league. And it's a direct shot at those, in those headquarter offices in New York City. What MLS, the way that MLS and Disco went about this is an absolute joke. This should not be happening at all. The fact that a GAM gets to jeopardize Espinoza's career and walks away a free man is honestly very mind-boggling and very questionable. What is really going on, within pro referees, and what's going on within these committees? How is this not being brought to light? It's pretty obvious from the replays that a challenge like that deemed a red card, and it deems a fine as well. Almeyda isn't really asking for much. No, he wants equality, and there's certainly a double standard in MLS, right? You have players like Ibra, and you have the Carlos Velases of the world, who are in this bubble wrap, and they don't want to be touched. Zlatan gets to do what he wants with opposing players, gets no repercussions whatsoever. The Quakes, put out one of their best players on the field, and in a split second, his career is almost ended. So, definitely a double standard. And Matías Almeyda, I personally believe, had every right to speak his mind today.
Yeah, and to me, that quote indicates that he's going to eventually take it up with the league, share his feelings with the league privately, if he needs to do so. And clearly, he's already sharing his thoughts publicly. I think I don't imagine that much good can come from speaking out like this. But I think it goes to show that really they're a family in that locker room, and they're standing up for each other. And that in the culture they have in the Quakes locker room, is standing up for each other is really important in this way.
Yeah, so this could have been reviewed by referees up in a booth. This could have been reviewed by a disciplinary committee. But as you can see on your screen, kind of a horrific challenge that you don't always get the chance to see in international football. He comes in late there, and it's just a crunching challenge and tackle, and Espinoza took a while to get up from it, and then eventually substituted minutes later. But the Quakes do move on. We'll talk about a replacement for Espinoza as we get into our Rapids preview. But let's talk about Anibal Godoy, the destroyer in the heart of central midfield for San Jose Earthquakes. He's been a staple in the side for many years. He's kind of lost his way this season with injury and maybe being out of favor to Jackson, Yule, and Judson. But he'll be traded at the end of the year, $650,000 in GAM, so the Quakes could use that how they would like. But is this a loss for you? How do you see that?
Look, I think Godoy is a really important figure in the locker room for the team. He's a veteran of this team now. He's seen a lot with this team, and he leads the players on and off the field. So in that sense, I think it will be a loss for the team. But on the field, look, he got injured. He went to the Gold Cup, then he got injured. He's missed their last 9 Major League Soccer matches, I believe. And it doesn't really look like the Quakes have missed him on the field. Jackson, Yule, and Judson have both really stepped up to the plate and held down that midfield. They've gone 6-1-2 in those last 9 games. So I think Almeyda can be confident that he's making the right moves. And they're getting $650,000 in GAM in return from Nashville for Godoy. That's a lot of GAM, and it'll be interesting to see what they do with that. And I think they could bring on some pieces that more than make up for this loss.
Look, I think Jesse Fiorelli and co. absolutely gypped, finessed Nashville soccer club this evening. I guess they finally, or this morning they finally made it official. From what we heard, this deal had been in the works for the last 2 months. So the Quakes walk away, being the big winners from this. Nashville adopts a player that at certain times can pose as maybe one of the best 5/8s in the league, can also play as a 6, obviously. But he's hot or cold. And we've been talking about Godoy for the last couple of years. We've been covering this team, Alex and I, and in 2017, 2018, 2017 in particular was a great season for the Panamanian. Started off the season with flying colors. I think it was 2 goals in his first 3 games. Then he took a dip. Then he came back, and then he ended on a low. Had that contract extension, and then 2018 was obviously abysmal for him. 2019, this season in specific, hasn't gone to his liking. I think that injury really, really set him back. It really hampered his abilities to move on to a different team that probably would have appealed to him a little bit more, and I'm speaking about Pumas. The interest for him to go to Pumas was concrete. There was a big chance for him to make a jump to Liga MX, a dream of his. It didn't come to fruition. Now he has to settle for Nashville, who I believe he signed with for 2 years. For him, it's a good safety net. He will continue playing in MLS. He knows the league. I'm sure he's going to get paid well. But for the Earthquakes, it sheds a lot of cap space. Obviously, he's a player that was sitting, between that high TAM level, that low DP level. So in that sense, it's a good offload for the Quakes, and I think Godoy, remains happy. He gets to play with the Quakes for the next couple of months. I don't know if he will actually get any playing time, but he will be able to experience probably one of the best seasons with the Quakes. He's not going to be leaving through the back door. But overall, it's a big win for the Quakes. Like I said, they get to unload a bunch of money, cap space, and they get to hopefully use that for their big DP.
And look, I think you bring up an interesting point. It's always interesting to see how players react on the field once they already know they've been sold and will be leaving the club at the end of the season.
He looked happy today.
And I think I think given the way this team's playing, I don't expect to see a significant change in the way he's been playing. He was a very streaky player, has been in his time at the Quakes, as you say, Joel. He was in a hot run of form before he went to the Gold Cup and got injured. So I definitely expect to see more of Godoy on the field this season, and still think he has a part to play for the team before he leaves.
Yeah, but and also I wanted to add, it really shows the business side of the sport, right? In a matter of months, fortunes can change for players. I think, towards April, late April, early May, a lot of us were in agreement that Anibal Godoy was, a staple player, and that in order for the Quakes to continue on this good path, they were going to need him within the starting 11, or at least within the 18.
Here to stay, yeah.
Yeah, that he was here to stay, and that maybe he would sign an extension. Who knows, right? Well, he had that injury. He went to the national team. X-rays came back negative. He had to have that surgery. And now he quickly became a valuable trade asset. They dealt him out. And at the end, the Quakes got some good cash for him. Nashville definitely showing that they're going to be FC Cincinnati 2.0 next season, in my opinion. If you're doing these type of trades, I don't think there's a whole lot of hope for them. But hey, he finds a new home. The Quakes move on, and I think all parties leave happy in this case.
And look, he's still only 29, still has plenty of good years ahead of him to play for Nashville. And I think they're getting a good piece regardless of what they're losing potentially with the GAM. They're getting a player they can trust for their inaugural season next year.
Yeah, 5 years with the San Jose Earthquakes. This will be his last year. 99 appearances for the Quakes. 99 appearances also for Panama. Yes, I looked it up while these two lads were chatting. Just a heads up, you guys can ask us any questions. We will take questions at the end. We are an interactive show. We like to take your questions. I already see a very important Moneyball question in the queue here that we will get to for sure. Thank you very much, Esteban Quesada. I promise we will get to this question. In fact, it'll be the first question that we ask. With Godoy leaving, obviously the Quakes will have a little bit less of central midfield to kind of work with, but you might see a number 10 move into Magnus's position. Maybe Magnus might move back. Tactically, it kind of changes things a little bit here, because Jackson Yueill takes his place. Judson is the solid number 6, but who are the replacements? Is it a Kevin Partida? And then, who's the replacement, when someone like Eriksson goes down? Is that a Vaco? Is that Fierro? Does Fierro come in and play underneath? We've heard that Andrés Ríos comes and plays underneath. Tactically, how does this change? Or who's the new central midfielder coming in next season?
I think first of all, this means that almost certainly the Quakes are going to look to try to hold on Judson. He's currently on a season-long loan for the team. They're going to try to hold him on and secure a permanent deal for him during the offseason. And I wouldn't be surprised if they signed another DP-level midfielder. They didn't sign a DP this summer. Presumably, they're going to be in the market again.
Which they promised.
In the winter. They did promise. They reneged on that promise. But I would expect them to go out in the winter and sign a high-level DP player, and that could be now the spot where they don't particularly have a lot of depth in the central midfield spot right now. With Godoy leaving, they won't next season, so that could be a spot to look out for.
No red flags. There's no alarm bells going off. The Quakes are in a good position with or without Godoy. Obviously, the record speaks for itself. they've been able to, patch up those gaps that he left with brilliant play from Judson and Jackson Newell. Moving forward, I think Matías has structured this team to be very versatile. Bringing in players who can play numerous positions. As you mentioned, you do have Fierro, who can fit in anywhere in that front three, in that front four. You also have Ríos, who can drop back and play behind the striker. And Eriksson is also flexible himself. So in that sense, I don't think there's going to be a real need to bring anyone at the moment. I mean, they won't have room to bring anyone. Godoy is staying with the team, obviously, so they're 30 of 30. They're complete for now. We'll see how the season ends up. You never know what's going to happen as the season progresses. Maybe someone can go down in injury. You never know. But they also have, some young players in the mix. You did mention Kevin Partida as well. Both
Luis
of those,
Felipe as
Luis
well.
Felipe as well. Both of those, all three of those players, I should say, are comfortable in those 6 and those 8 positions. So I think for now, at least for 2019, they're going to be in a good position. $650,000 in general allocation money will definitely serve them well when they want to, expand the portfolio, and when they do want to bring some new faces and maybe cycle the roster a bit. But I don't think they should worry at all.
Let's move on and let's chat about the result this past weekend, a 1-1 draw at home against the Columbus Crew. A sensational first half by Quakes standards. They score a goal in the first half. Second half, Columbus, they raise their level. They All right, so let's talk about the Columbus Crew result, 1-1 at home at Avaya Castle. They haven't lost there since March 30th. I think it's 12 matches unbeaten, including U.S. Open Cup and the friendly as well. Some folks might look at this as 2 points dropped. Some folks might look at it as MLS parity kind of evening itself out, given the Seattle result, given the Galaxy result from this last weekend too, and Minnesota just barely eking by Portland. But at the end of the day, what do you make?
I think the Quakes will look at this as 2 points lost. Now that they're getting used to winning, they go out every game and are expecting to get the 3 points. And anything less feels like a failure. I think the players actually got down on themselves quite a bit after the draw this weekend. We saw Florian Jungwirth collapse into the turf at the final whistle in disappointment. I think Matías Almeyda went into the locker room and had to remind the players, hey, this is a product of our own success, right?
Right.
That this is just a blip in the road, and that overall the team is still on the right path. So by the time us media got in there, I think the mood in the locker room was significantly lighter. But I think the result does pose some genuine causes for concern for Almeyda. You see Columbus come in and really tactically outmaneuver the Quakes in the second half. Usually the Quakes are the one, even when they drop points, they're the ones pushing the tempo and have their finger on the pulse of the game. But we really saw Columbus wrest control of the match in the second half, and could be a blueprint for other teams looking to take advantage of the Quakes in the future.
Yeah, I'm going to take a non-Quake-centric view on all of this. I think it was just extraordinary play from Columbus Crew. All 90 minutes, to be honest. Masterclass from Caleb Porter, who was a candidate to take over the head coaching job of the San Jose Earthquakes at the beginning of 2019. Interesting how we had a little full circle there. But no, Columbus came prepared. They played one of the best games probably of their season. They gave San Jose a very difficult time. Yes, in the stats category, the San Jose Earthquakes had them beat quite easily. They had more shots and more shots on target. They had more possession than the Crew, but the Crew knew how to adjust themselves tactically. We saw the adjustments that Caleb Porter did at halftime, really calling for his players to be very compact, very composed on the defensive end, and then springing forward in those dangerous counterattacks led by Pedro Santos and Jazzy Sardes. So I think it was a very laudable performance from the Crew, that the Quakes were able to outmaneuver as well in a way, because I think that at many points of the game, the Quakes were very susceptible, especially once they scored that goal. The Columbus Crew did. For some reason, that specific sequence really reminded me of those Quakes that used to let 5 goals in when going up against opponents like LAFC, where a player or two would misjudge their marking, or where a player or two on the defensive end would, just not be there physically 100%, and would allow, the opposing players to just get by with ease and connect passes and split them with 1-2s. So in that case, hats off to Columbus. The Quakes were able to salvage a point. Yes, it did feel a lot like a defeat. That was definitely the aura within the Quakes locker room. But yeah, like you said, it's a product of their success, right? The Quakes are so used to winning now, and it's quite weird. Just like the whole ethos and the culture of Matías Almeyda, this is another layer of that. It's very unfamiliar to most of us who have been covering the team, and I'm sure to you fans who've been watching this team for a long time. But that's the reality. The Quakes are the team to beat. The Quakes are usually the ones winning, and they have a big target on their back. We'll see how they react when they go on the road 3 weeks in a row. It's not going to be an easy task. And like we said before, 2 weeks ago was when the challenge started, and the challenge is going to keep going on until the season ends for the Quakes.
And another product of San Jose's success is that teams are designing very specific game plans for them now. They're paying attention, whereas in the past maybe the Quakes can fly under the radar.
The
Certainly
sample
not
size
anymore.
is much bigger now.
Exactly, and I think you'll start to see this more often. Teams paying more attention to San Jose. One thing
I don't think they're going to pay more attention to San Jose. I think they're going to pay more attention to the opponents, opponent's success. In this case, if I were Colorado,
I'd study Columbus
I'd study Columbus
the entire time.
Exactly.
Right.
That's
and that's an interesting point you raised. It's just, I think, what I saw was the details. Columbus double teaming Cristian Espinoza on the wing. That's a very specific tactical choice that they made, that they clearly, had in mind for the Quakes.
and also trying to end his career. That's
Well, that aside, I think
that's a bit effective.
that is an effective way to take him out of the game. But regardless, I think that this could force Matías to have another challenge, to have to now take his team to another level. Now that teams are designing game plans for them, they're really going to have to outmaneuver them tactically as well. And they talk about the Quakes often, how they try to focus on their own game more than the other team's game. But I think now they're going to have to maybe be a little bit smarter in design specific game plans to try to get around that. One thing we heard Matías talk about at his press conference this week was their game plan for going forward to Colorado, how specifically for the altitude, having just played Colorado, they'll be a little bit more defensive and look to launch on the counterattack, was what he said. So I think we're starting to see some of that going forward.
Speaking about progressing and getting better, today was the transfer deadline in MLS. Today was the final day of the summer transfer window, and a lot has been talked about LAFC continuing to reinforce themselves and getting even better than they are now. Well, I don't think a lot of attention has been placed on this. You talk about how the Quakes might start evolving tactically in order to outclass certain competitors who are going to be or are going to come in well studied. Let's not forget the Quakes signed 2 players that have yet to debut for this team. Yeah. 2 quality players that the resume speaks for itself. They've played for big teams. They've been key pieces at some of the biggest teams in their countries, in their respective countries. So the Quakes still have a lot of firepower that they haven't shown. We'll see how that pays off for them, but I think it's something that needs to be mentioned. This team is still evolving. It's still at an infant stage. I mean, if you want to really stretch out the timeline, this is only year 1 of 4 for Matías Almeyda. So if it's already going this way, we can already imagine what it's going to be like, halfway into the 2nd season or halfway into the 3rd season. But for sure, I think a little more attention needs to be given to the fact that they have 2 players, in their arsenal that they have yet to even test out as,
Yeah, and fans probably can't wait to see these players play. If you're a fan of this team and have been kind of latched on the last couple of years and haven't seen this team go to the playoffs or seen this team be successful, this is going to be a year for the ages and in sequential years as well. But who would have thought here, episode 1, 2, 3, 4, us sitting here now, episode 25, talking about the playoffs. We will have a special segment with the 4th member of our team today. Look, the Quakes in the first half of that game against Columbus, they completely outplayed them. They didn't get the 2nd goal. That's the story. They didn't get the 2nd goal. They couldn't kill the game off. They had dozens of chances to do it, and they didn't do that. Second half, Columbus packs the midfield. They're very good on the wings. They're asking their outside backs and their wingers to work in tandem. They're able to use the target player in Jazzy Zardes in a phenomenal way. And then Caleb Porter gives this press conference and gives comments to our colleague Jamin Moore about, hey, I think we had him in the second half. I also think that we had the chance to win it. And you know what? This guy's right. They were compact in the first half. They conceded a goal, okay? And then the second half, they got their goal and somewhat outplayed the Quakes. So kind of an interesting story, certainly a blueprint. The tea leaves, as you said, Alex Morgan, are there for other teams to pick up on the Quakes. And so warning sign, yes. I think tea leaves a little bit more. And I think Joel just made the point about these other players. And I've always talked about it on this show, but I'll come back to it again and again, time and time again. It's an unlocking player, the player that can pick the lock, the player that's creative and dynamic at the top of the 18 when that player arrives there to be able to take 1 or 2 touches on either foot. And you see Vako do it, have done it a couple times this year, but that player that can play underneath. Granted, Eriksson is doing a good job, but is there more of a world-class player that they can bring in at that position? That's my Charles rant for this little gamut. Let's move on. Let's talk about the Colorado Rapids and the biggest elephant in the room, the tactical change. Who's coming in for Espinoza in that position?
Well, I think the no-brainer would be to bring in Shea Salinas and maybe throw in and incorporate Carlos Fierro into the 18. Almeyda did hint a little about potentially squeezing in Fierro into the 18 and having him travel with the team over to Colorado this weekend. But certainly Shea has to be the replacement on the wing. I mean, he's been exceptional this season, scoring, I believe, 6 goals already, tallying a couple of assists. A league record for him, a career record for him. If it was Shea Salinas, if it wasn't this team that's performing so well, I think Shea Salinas would have been a definite starter all 20-plus games already. He has provided a spark for the Quakes when he's come off the bench. I think he'll certainly do well in Colorado, given the fact that he's one of the most fittest players that the Quakes have. So I don't think the altitude will really hamper his abilities there. For me, it's Shea Salinas.
Yeah, swap in, swap out. That's kind of the ordeal. Welcome to Jamin Moore. We're going to get into a special segment in just a second with Jamin on playoff probabilities, but we're talking about who's going to replace Cristian Espinoza after the horror challenge that he received from Akam from Columbus, who was not booked by the disciplinary committee or given a red card. It was not reviewed via VAR, which was the beginning of the show. You're right. Joel, and I've also going to come back to it again. It's nice to be able to boast 4 wingers for 2 positions. You have Carlos Fierro, you have Cristian Espinoza, you have Vaco, you have Shea Salinas, and you've seen Magnus Eriksson out there
Danny Husin as well.
Danny Husin and Haji potentially if he gets a go. So lots on the wings, and it's also, if you're the coach and you're the manager, who's also the best 1v1 in those wide channels to take on an outside back, a speedy outside back, who's also got some speed themselves, and is that person. So
Shea Salinas' trademark cut back has worked wonders this season. I don't see why it wouldn't, on a Saturday night at Dick's Sporting Goods Park.
Yeah, I think Shea's the obvious choice here because of his speed and it's Matías has clearly designed the game plan. In fact, if you go back to the Anibal Godoy question, one of the things that has come up about Anibal Godoy, and this came out in even speaking with Jackson Yule today, was that Anibal Godoy he makes an offense kind of built around his distribution ability. So everything goes through him, and he has a high passing percentage, and he was the person in charge of doing that. With him out, Matías Almeyda has actually refactored the offense, and he did so very, very quickly. And even Jackson today said, yeah, we play through our wingers. Yeah. And we put the balls out to the wings, and they use that speed and they use that technical ability to be able to create opportunities. That doesn't go through the middle of the pitch. And so it's important that Matías puts somebody out there that he trusts. Right now, he trusts Shea Salinas.
Yeah, and we can tell that a lot of the workload is being pressured on the wingers, and we're actually seeing it pay dividends in, I guess, a perfect embodiment of that is Vaco. If you look at his numbers ever since Godoy was benched or was sidelined due to his injury, and Vaco kind of got into the mix at that point. Both departure and arrivals coincided, and Vaco has been on this spree because he's been given the liberty. Now, hence, against Columbus, it was a different story. Columbus really, really emphasized on canceling out those wingers. They canceled out Espinoza really well, and they did as well with Vaco. So those are, the wingers are valuable assets to this team. And as you were saying, it's a restructured team, and I think it's going to keep evolving as the weeks go on.
I was looking at the video against Columbus of the first part of the second half and looking at what was effective. And there's 2 things that they were doing. One is they were spreading the Quakes out. They're not afraid to hold on to the ball. Now, the Rapids don't have that type of talent to be able to hold on to the ball, to be extremely patient and be able to move the ball around the back. The reason Columbus does is because their coach used to be Greg Berhalter, and he taught them how to do that, right? So they were able to do that. That was one. Number 2 is when the Quakes attacked, you will see basically every single time 2 to 3 guys on Espinoza and on Vaca. They gave him no space to be able to work. The week before, against was a Vancouver, they defended differently. They tried
Colorado.
to, or Colorado, sorry,
Yeah.
they marked them out.
Yeah.
And that's the way that they defended. And last week, I thought it was much more effective. I think Porter put on a coaching masterclass in the second half and found ways to cancel out the Quakes attack and even a late charge from the Quakes at the end, along with Wondolowski, wasn't enough.
It would be very imprudent if Connor Casey isn't studying that film.
Absolutely.
He really needs to get to it. Maybe someone can send it to him.
Well, the Rapids rock bottom in the league on the western side, 6-10-5, 5-3-3 in the last 11. Though he's definitely turned around his team. Just one of those. One of those out of the 6 wins was on the road. So all 5 of them coming at home. Jamin, you wanted to talk a little tactics about how Colorado plays. We talked about a couple weeks ago. They love their set pieces, especially off of corners, and especially at home as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. They've lived off of the set pieces for a while, and one of the ways that you can get a team going very quickly is to focus on 2 things: defense and set pieces. And Connor Casey's focused on both, and that's a good reason why the Rapids are a better team now than they were 2 to 3 months ago. And so there's definite improvements there. The other thing that Matías Almeyda noted today, and we mentioned it on the show a couple weeks ago, is that they actually play 2 different ways. They play away on the road, They play away at home. And at home, they're a much more aggressive team at being able to push the ball forward. But then when we talked to Jackson Yule today, he kind of indicated that that's why the Quakes have been so successful on the road over the last few games. They've actually been more dominant in road games than they have in their home games. Despite the loss to Minnesota, they controlled probably 70% of that game, and they were the aggressor, right? And so the reason that this is the case is because offenses tend to push forward and they tend to spread their attack more, which when the Quakes win the ball, and they will, they find the spaces to be able to move. It's going to be very difficult for them to 2v1 Vako if there's space all over the place for Vako to be able to move. And I think that's the situation that the Quakes have to try to exploit, is they have to be able to win the ball, and they have to transition quickly before the space closes. They got to get it to their speedsters and the technical people who can find those holes and find those opportunities.
3-4-3 on the road. We were just chatting about that prior to going on air, and I think that away record's only going to get better for the Earthquakes. Joel, you and I sat at the Britannia Arms downtown when the Quakes played against Seattle, the 2-2 draw. And that's what I said to myself, and I remember saying this to you. I said, I don't know if this team is going to lose too many matches on the road. They look sharp, they look crisp, they look so hungry on the counterattack, especially away from home, especially in front of 35,000 screaming fans in Seattle. Granted, it's a midweek game, right? But look, on the road, the Houston game, they barely kind of lost. Let's be honest. The Minnesota game, okay, let's be honest here, 3-1. All right, maybe a little outclassed in Minnesota, but they're starting to find this road form. And I always talk about home form, but road form, okay, might have it for the playoffs. You never know, right?
Right. No, absolutely. The Quakes have been wanting to make statements week in and week out on the road. They want to start off on the front foot, and they've done so. You mentioned about how they've aggressively imposed themselves against competitors on the road, and they've done that in historic fashion, breaking records. 25 plus shots on not on frame, but on taking 25 shots. Maybe putting 15 on frame, maybe putting 28 shots and another 15 on frame. It's a lot. It's a lot for the home team. They don't expect this. Home sides don't expect this in MLS. They expect to be the one. They expect to be the dominant one. Sorry, and that's certainly not the case with the San Jose Earthquakes this season. It's something about Matías. He wants to send a clear message. He wants to make sure that no one thinks that it's a fluke, that what's going on is due to some I don't know, special healing potion or something of that matter. This team is for real. And they're going to do the same against Colorado. Now, granted, Colorado had a pretty good showing last week at home. They won 6-3. They had a hat trick from Kai Kamara, who is now 34, 35 years of age and still scoring goals left and right. Diego Rubio got on the score sheet as well. This is a team that is certainly playing with a lot more confidence under Casey than they were with Anthony Hudson. And they play much better at home. I don't know if it has anything to do with the altitude. I think that's a pretty outdated narrative there, but there's something about them this season. They probably know they're not going to make playoffs, but they want to leave something behind. And the Quakes are obviously a foe that they have recent experience playing against. But I think the Quakes are going to be too much for them again. Now, let's see. The Quakes aren't going to be going to Colorado with Espinoza. Espinoza was a lot for the Rapids 2 weeks ago. Was too much for the Rapids, and was as was Vaco. This week they won't have Espinoza. They'll have Shea Salinas most likely. But I think it's still going to be a really, really tough task for the Rapids. Dealing with the Quakes on the road is not easy at all.
Certainly, we'll have to find out. Quakes defeating Colorado a couple weeks ago at home. The return fixture right back in Colorado this weekend. Speaking of out of date, the Quakes, they'll most likely make the playoffs for the first time. Well, excuse me, I'll pull it back a little bit. They made the playoffs in 2017, but before that, there was a barren spell, 2012 and 2010 before that, after coming back in 2008. But Jamin has some information here and wants to chat a little bit. Yeah.
I just wanted to touch back on that. Yes, they made the playoffs in 2017, but it didn't feel like it, right?
Didn't. No, it didn't.
5-0 drilling in Vancouver.
Other than the celebration out of Vaio on the goal by Marco
Overboard.
Urena, right? Overboard, champagne. I mean, come on.
Yikes.
You want a playoff spot in Champagne. It was a little too much for me.
Yeah, obviously it got to their heads, and they went out to Vancouver and put out a completely flat performance. But anyways, let's get to what...
Well, I think the question here is what are the Quakes' chances in the playoffs? And really, in order to try to figure that out, you really have to know where the Western Conference is right now. I mean, you've had up the standings earlier, Charles. This is a really interesting standings that we've got right now. 5 points separating the second spot, which is right now held by Minnesota United, all the way through FC Dallas with 33 points. That's only 5 points difference. Below them, the Portland Timbers knocking at the door with a ton of home games coming at 31 points. The Houston Dynamo at 30. Sporting Kansas City, remember them? They were good, right? And then they fell off, and everyone's like, no, not so good now. Well, you know what? They went on the road last week and beat the Seattle Sounders, and I thought did a fantastic job on the road.
I wouldn't cross them off the list.
I don't think you can cross almost anybody off the list right now. I think maybe the Rapids and maybe Vancouver at this point. It's too much for them to get back into it. So I was actually checking out the playoff probabilities. I thought it'd be a little bit fun to take a look at these and see what the panel thinks about these playoff probabilities. So I am looking at AmericanSoccerAnalysis.com, who I occasionally write for. I am looking at their playoff probabilities. If you want to join with us online, I'm just going to go through these. You want to start at the top or the bottom?
Bottom.
Let's start at the bottom.
Yeah.
Okay. So Colorado, Vancouver, their chance right now to make the playoffs. Colorado's at 0.3%, Vancouver's 0.1%.
Yikes.
I think that's about right.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Yeah, not good.
Yeah, they're
No.
Connor
Okay,
Casey's saying
so let's move up.
Nope.
Move up. So next on the list here is actually Houston. Houston comes in at 16%, and remember, Houston right now has 30 points in the 9th position.
Do we
Higher
remember
or
their...
lower than the 16% chance, do you think? Remember Card Sharks?
I'm gonna say lower percentage.
You're gonna say lower.
I
You
like
don't
Houston.
think-
I like the way that they play, and I liked even the reverse fixture at their place where they beat the Quakes. But I think that their form is just so inconsistent.
Signing today of LAFC's
Cristian Ramirez.
Ramirez. So
I mean,
it's a big signing.
obviously it's a signing that says that they want to make a serious push for playoffs, but I think it might come too late. This season has been an up and down roller coaster for them. Remember, 5, 6, 7 weeks in, Houston was the best team in the West, and now they're on the outside looking in. I don't think it's going to be enough for Wilmer Cabrera. And
They had the home heavy start, and now the away games are kind of catching up with them. Sporting Kansas City right now sitting on a 29.2%. And remember that they are right now in the 10th spot with 28 points. That's 5 off of the pace. Do you think 22%, or 29.2%? Higher than that, lower than that, do you guys think?
Let's say lower.
Think a little bit lower?
Yeah.
I'm going to say a little higher.
A little higher.
Just based on the pedigree, based on what they've been able to do in the past.
Experience,
based on the history, based on the coach and the manager who's
hold
been there
that
for
thought.
10 plus years.
Hold that thought, because now somebody,
go.
if they go in,
longest
somebody
tenured
has to come
coach
out.
in MLS history.
Yeah.
Yeah, if they go in,
Or at
those-
least
longest
current coach.
tenured coach in world football if it keeps going,
you have to think about who's going to come out. So we're going to get to that here in
Right.
a little bit, because right now we're talking about the teams that are still trying to catch up. Next on the list is FC Dallas. They currently hold the 7th spot at 33 points, but trending maybe in the wrong direction. Right now, this says that they're at 44.3%. What do you guys think?
Lower.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm lower on that for sure.
I think if anything happens with Paxton Pomykal, I think they're just done.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
their offense flows entirely through him. He's been the key to any success that they've had, and they haven't had enough of it. I agree. I think they're going to fall off the pace.
That says a lot about the team, by the way. I think Paxton's 19 years of age.
Yeah, very young.
Yeah.
Very, very young. Next up would be, let's see, this says that RSL is next. RSL at 69.9%, basically 70%. They are currently 34 points in the 6th spot. What do you guys think?
I think it's a little high. I'd
Feels
give
high,
him,
doesn't
I'd
it?
give him 50-50, to be honest, 50%.
Yeah, feels high to
It's
me.
very
too.
high.
Coin
yeah,
flip.
coin flip on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that that's about right. This feels a little strong. That might be where a Sporting Kansas City could sneak in.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
they've also taken a huge emotional toll with the whole Petke situation. That's a serious problem, I think, personally, for the locker room. Petke's obviously the engine there. He's the orchestrator, and without him, the chemistry must be falling pretty quickly.
All right, moving up the probabilities, now we get to the San Jose Earthquakes. From a probability perspective, at 82%. Now, one of our regular watchers, J.D. McCall, pointed out that he felt that the Quakes, something was not quite right with the probabilities. But one of the reasons that it's sitting at 82% is actually because last season is heavily factored into the mathematics that go into a probability. Whether you're looking at a 538, or you're looking at American Soccer Analysis, any site you look at, and in almost any sport, over season success factors in heavily to these types of things. It's just the way that the math works, and it's factored in. So last season hurting the Quakes. Right now at 82%, that's off 6.1% from last week. 82% for the Quakes just to make the playoffs at this point. Higher or lower? And with a lot of road games to come.
I think it might be higher.
I'm going to say it's just a tad lower. I'm going to say it's in the high 70s. Does that number factor in not doing so well and then putting in a team that's like, does it factor in parity points?
It factors in
sounds like
everything.
it's a parity point.
It also factors in a
thing.
lot of away games to come.
Because you're saying that they're not in there. I mean, it factors in last season's as well. I mean, it's very interesting.
I would say
At
an 85,
82%. I mean,
85%.
that's pretty good. I mean, if you're watching 82%.
Well, have you been watching
Four out
the
of- 4
Quakes?
out of 5 chances.
They're
Yeah.
the most interesting team in
Well,
the league.
yeah.
4 out of 5 chance to I mean, if you said at this point in the season, come on, guys. If you had said at this point in the season, at the beginning of the year, I'm going to give you a 4 out of 5 chance with 11 games to play, what would you have said?
Absolutely,
we will
100%.
take that, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
so I think it's maybe about right.
I think it's right.
I think with the
think
away
it's around-
games and the tough schedule that they have coming, I feel like it could drop off. It's possible it would drop off. I don't think it will, but it's
But
possible.
is the away schedule a roadblock to begin with? I mean, this team has been playing so well on the road.
Yeah, but look who's
arguably.
coming.
Yeah.
LAFC's
Yeah,
not lost
I mean-
at home, right? They've got New York
That's the
City
big
FC.
challenge.
That's the
They've
big
got
one.
Atlanta.
If they win that game in
got
Los
Portland.
Angeles,
It's
got
going to
Portland
shake
in
up a
Portland.
lot.
if they do win, though, let's go back to that LAFC matchup. If they do manage to get 3 points from that, one way or another, doesn't matter how they end up getting 3 points. If they walk away from Bank of California Stadium with 3 points, I think the Quakes are top 3 in the league.
They're going to make the playoffs if they can do that, because that confidence will carry them through the rest of the season, because that's coming up here in just like 3 or 4 games, right?
I agree.
So that's not far away, and they'll be the first team to beat LAFC at LAFC this year.
Right,
So-
and that will be their first victory. against
LAFC, by the way, has done what they've done, playing 13 games on the road and only 10 at home so far, which is extremely impressive. Okay, so moving up the table real quick, because we want to wrap this. Portland are out of the playoffs right now, sitting in the 8th spot.
You missed Minnesota.
Did I miss Minnesota?
You
I
did.
am sorry, I did miss Minnesota.
Because we have to talk about that.
Yeah,
And I know
well, let's
you've got
talk
some
about
comments
that.
on that.
Okay, all right, so Minnesota sitting in the 2nd spot, 38 points. You know, they've played 1 fewer home games than the Quakes, okay? And they're at an 87.9%. 87.9% for Minnesota.
I'm just gonna,
Just to make the playoffs.
right. I'm just going to let you go on this because I know you have so much to say on it. You're
Oh
ready
no,
to go.
I actually have something more to
Jamin
say
Moore.
about Seattle, but
Okay.
but I mean, look, the way Minnesota is winning games is not impressive. They weren't impressive against the Quakes. They got lucky on a handball call that might not have been a handball on Saturday in order to get a win at home. There, who are they beating where they're actually showing that they're a better team right now? Because I'm not seeing it.
Sometimes it doesn't take that, though.
No, sometimes it doesn't.
And-
But was that the Minnesota United that is going to make the playoffs, a winning ugly team?
The Minnesota United that played the Quakes at Avaya was a really solid Minnesota United. Granted, you know, then they go there, I lose to Minnesota United. It's just something weird that Adrian Heath does with that team. And check the Joel Soria interview, folks, because that was a dynamic interview talking about how he never had quality players
was
before.
amazing.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think it might have to do something with the manager, and they were really good on the road against the Quakes. I don't disagree with you in that statement. They look a little bit suspect. Based on the way they play, they don't look as confident, and they look for Quintero too much. They play through Quintero too much. I love Quintero, and I love number 10s. Let's be honest, if you like football, you love number 10s. But it's almost too much sometimes. And they didn't have them on the weekend, and they looked really sloppy.
Yeah, very
They
sloppy.
look sloppy.
I don't think there's anything wrong with playing through Quintero. I mean, if you paid the big bucks for him,
Right.
utilize him, exploit him. Sorry, I don't mean it in a negative way. I know it's a negative word, but exploit him, you know, milk him, get as much as you can from him. He's not going to be there forever. And I don't think that the Loons need to play trying to get, you know, stylistic points. They just need to go out there. They need to get the 3 points. They're pretty high up on the table. The projections are high. They're on the brink of winning the U.S. Open Cup. I mean, it's a good season for them. I think this justifies, you know, the impressive
88%.
season they're having.
88%. I think they make the playoffs. So the 88%,
Yeah, I think they make
I think they'll be
playoffs.
fine. I think they're in. I think that's all it's saying is 88% to make the playoffs. I just don't think they're as good as people are making them out to be. Anyway, moving on. Portland, moving up, 88.6%. They are sitting in 8th right now, but man, they've got a lot of home games left, including the Quakes on the final game of the season.
The Portland Timbers, I hate to say it, have been the most overrated team this season.
Oh, wow. I've got another one, but go ahead.
By far, I think the league has been pushing them so much. All the national pundits have been pushing them so much. The projections are pushing them a lot, and I know it has a lot to do with previous seasons.
Yeah.
They've always managed to
Find a
be
way.
here, come here at the right time. They might be able to do it this season, given the fact that they have their players are starting to show up. And obviously, I'm referring to the Fernandeses, the Valeris of the world. They've added some key pieces to their defense as well. They've let go of some players, Audi, Powell, but they've managed to find replacements, and they've moved on, and they have a slew of home games, obviously, which is the one that I think is
that's really driving this.
Yeah, it's
Random
certainly
Forest Trees love
influencing
the
it.
home game schedule.
Absolutely,
will
but
say.
I think, like I said, I'll stand by what I said. I think they're one of the most overrated teams this season.
I'm not going to completely disagree with that. I think that Brian Fernandez has made them a much more dangerous team, without a doubt. But Fernandez has scored one goal in the last 6 games. I mean, he's definitely fallen off of the pace.
He
came in at a torrid pace. Okay, he scored tonight, but that was in an Open Cup game, right?
Right.
So
Still 12 goals, though, I believe.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic
all
season without a doubt.
competitions, it's
But we
pretty good.
see these players, they come in hot. Pozuelo earlier in the season came in hot. Right? Rooney, when he came in the league last year, came in hot. Then people adjust, and they start to cool down. And now the rub on Brian Fernandez is, hey, just don't let him behind you. Sit a little bit deeper, keep him in front of you, and he's manageable. And actually, it's working for most teams. So I do think, to your point, that maybe a bit overrated, 88.6. I think they're going to get above the playoff line. The question is who's going to fall out. Is it an FC Dallas? Is it an RSL?
I think it's
somebody's got to fall out.
Obviously, the number's
FC
high, but
Dallas.
I also agree that they'll make the playoffs, especially with many games at home. And Gio Savarese does a really nice job with them. And he
history's
knows,
on their side too.
Yeah, and he knows his football. He knows how to get a result too, especially in when it comes down to the business end of the competition. He's that guy. And I would say, the roster of the Timbers, not as educated about it, I'll be honest. But what I would say is I'm very educated on the manager, and I've seen him go from NASL into Major League Soccer, and I've seen him, show his teams in San Francisco against the defunct now San Francisco Deltas that won the last NASL in 2017. Yep. He knows what it takes, and watching him last season and take his team to the Western Conference Final and then the MLS Cup was something to be seen. So anyway, that's my bit on the Timbers.
That's a good point. Okay, so I think there's 2 things that still have to be talked about here.
Yeah.
Seattle. Right now, Seattle is sitting at the 4th position with 38 points, but the probabilities love Seattle. 90.1% to make the playoffs after they just went out and laid a stinker at home against Sporting Kansas City. There's nothing impressive about this team. I think they've forgotten how to win. 90% to make the playoffs. Seattle, are you kidding me right now?
It's another quote unquote big market team. I know that doesn't really influence this.
But what about
Seattle?
What about Seattle does not say overrated right now? What about them? Give me one great thing about Seattle right now.
I can't. I
Stephen
think
Fry?
Rui Diaz, some magic in him. He can turn it on whenever he pleases.
Okay.
That's about it. I don't know. There's not much there.
Right. If you look at the metrics on this team, they're not good. They're literally in many metrics, it's Vancouver, Colorado, and Seattle.
I've never been a proponent of their style to begin with.
Yeah, no.
I'm gonna be
so
honest
I don't
with
understand
you,
that. But we've got one more team to go. And this is one that, of course, is near and dear to the hearts of Quakes fans. The LA Galaxy, currently sitting in 5th position with 37 points, with the Houston Timbers potentially creeping up on them and a resurging Sporting Kansas City coming. The probabilities say 91.5%.
First of all,
91.5%. They didn't even make the playoffs last year.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to make the playoffs this year, hands down. Zlatan's going to make sure he makes the playoffs this year. There's no way they're not making the playoffs this year.
Man, the West is so close.
Yeah, the West is really close. But no, I mean, look.
91.5% to make the playoffs. Would you put those kind of numbers on the LA Galaxy right now?
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, they almost have a similar record home and away to Seattle, but they have Zlatan, and they're decent at home, and they're good. Okay, the Quakes, they should be thinking, hey, first round, let's go Galaxy. First round, let's go 4-5 matchup.
Can Zlatan stay healthy for 11 more games?
Of course he will. Come on, they'll put him in an incubator until he's ready for the or oxygen tent so he can rest his legs or whatever.
Wrap.
Yeah, that bubble wrap. I mean, but yeah, you're right.
And he'll go around and choke all the opponents and not get fined or suspended. So.
And the last here is LAFC, 100% chance to make the playoffs, 99% chance to make the Shield. In case you're wondering who else has a chance to even make the Shield at this point, NYC. New York City FC has a 0.1% chance. Philadelphia has a 0.1% chance. Just give them the Supporters Shield right now with 11 games to play. ridiculous.
Yeah, seriously. No kidding. That's why I highlight that game against LAFC. It's a huge one. It will
It's
be
big time.
it would be the biggest statement, victory.
And they can't be as motivated. They cannot be as motivated as the Earthquakes should be at
Recent
that point.
history, yeah.
Yeah, and it would shake up a lot on Major League Soccer's grounds, right? Where you're talking about how you feel like some of these probabilities are maybe pushing some certain markets into the playoffs, or maybe favoring certain markets, and that's why we have this show, by the way, to
math, Charles.
to talk about the San Jose Earthquakes and to chat about this team, and it's about you, and it's about your questions. So we'll move into question answer time, and I promised Esteban Quesada that I would take his question first. So, Esteban Quesada, the first question of the night, and it is an important question. He writes, what do you think the plans are of the Quakes using the GAM? I think they're obviously going to maybe try to get someone on a DP level with the GAM. What do you make of that, Joel?
Well, it's very flexible. There are numerous things you can do with GAM. You can trade it for TAM. You can
trade it for TAM.
And they have.
Right, they have.
You can do that. You can buy an international slot. You can, use it to acquire a player within the league. You can also, there's multiple ways you can use it. I think that it will be utilized to sign a designated player this winter. Obviously, you can't directly ship GAM to a team abroad, right? But you can find ways to utilize that money to open room or to send out a player, whatever. I think that's what it's going to be for it. And I don't know. This is all speculation. I don't like to speculate. I really, really don't. But there's a feeling that the Quakes are really going to push for Cristian Espinoza this winter, and I've spoken about it. The Quakes didn't sign a savior in Carlos Fierro. The savior is already within the team, and he wears a number 10 jersey, and he's from Argentina, and he belongs to Villarreal, and his name is Cristian Espinoza. That's who the Quakes need to go after, no matter what. Even if they fail, they need to take a stab at it. This player has changed the fortunes of this team. The records, his statistics might not speak for itself, but we have seen, at least people who watch this team regularly, we have seen the different style that he brings, just that flavor that was never, that specimen that was just not around before. That's what Cristian Espinoza is. He has really unlocked a lot of vaults for this team. And I think it would be a big failure if they didn't at least try to secure him on a permanent this winter.
Yeah, if you say, why is Jackson Yule better? Why is Vaco better? Why is Eriksson better? Right. The reason for these is because Cristian Espinoza draws that kind of attention from other teams, and he opens up opportunities for other players. And make no mistake, just a little bit more space on the pitch makes a massive difference for the other players to be able to do what they do best without being under immense pressure. When you have no weapons, it's easy to neutralize the very few weapons that you do have. And Cristian Espinoza opens up the game for the Quakes. They have to make a bid for him. I don't know if this GAM is for that or not, but I agree with you, Joel. They have to find a way to try to lock him in, at least for another season.
It's a good segue into talking about Espinoza.
Right, yeah, and it's a good segue into the question of Nathan Zaragoza, who writes, so far this season, who do you feel are the overachievers of this team, and who needs to improve?
Overachiever off the bat, Shea Salinas is mine.
The Salinas-ons, right?
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely. I think Shea Salinas, if this was the final chapter of his career, I think, it would be an amazing way to finish it. I think he's still got another year or two left in him. But when you're a speed player, Father Time's going to catch up to you at some point. I do hope that this isn't it for him, but he's definitely overachiever of the year for me. Underachiever, right now, I hate to say it. I think other people have pointed it out too. It just feels like Nick Lima is just kind of off right now. And it's hard to take and say, okay, let's just move him from right back to left back. But it's not that simple. How you play on one side of the pitch versus the other is completely different. The types of players that you face in the league, he spent 2 years building up a repertoire, knowing how to play people on one side of the pitch. He has to restart that from scratch on the other side. And from off the bat, his very first game against Nacho Piatti, shutting him down, I think immediately set expectations super high for him. I think he's having to relearn some things in both Almeyda's system. I think he's having to relearn some things about himself. I think he's having to learn a brand new position. It's tough, but right now he's an underachiever.
I have to agree with you, and I don't know if his situation is going to better. And that is the big question mark, right? I think if I were him, I really would have pushed for that move to Hertha. I know it was only a trial. Maybe there wasn't really anything from the Bundesliga side to begin with. But he has a level to compete in Europe. At least I think so. He has certain things to work on the defensive end, and I've heard that from teammates. I've heard that from people obviously involved with the team. But things aren't looking so great for him at the moment. And yes, he's still starting, and yes, he still has his moments. He had that assist to Vako, which was all Vako, obviously. But this isn't ideal for a soon-to-be 25-year-old who was projected to be, possibly the biggest offload for the Quakes in team history. He's a player that definitely warrants a couple of millions of dollars if you're going to transfer him out. That's certainly taking a hit. That has taken a huge hit this season. He was coming, off of a decent start to the season, goes with the national team, is a part of the Gold Cup team, gets a start against Guyana. Then Reggie Cannon takes over. Then Reggie Cannon starts getting all the praises. Reggie Cannon should be in Europe. And then Nick Lima comes back a bit empty-handed from that tournament, to be honest with you.
Absolutely.
And he comes back and he has to start from scratch. And then people start questioning what his relationship is like within, this team with Matías Almeyda. And now not much is being said about Nick.
No, Marcos Lopez is improving. Carlos Fierro has been pointed out by Matías as being a left-back option. He could slide as low as third on the depth chart here soon.
I was just going to say my need for improvement is Marco Lopez, because you saw him starting games at left back. Who's this new left back? Are the Quakes going to sign a left back? Who's playing left back this week for the Quakes? I mean, this has been something that was on the charts for a year and a half. Who's playing left back? Suddenly Marco Lopez takes the spot. Does okay-ish, does well, second, third, fourth game in, then gets this red card, and then weird injury, something going on there, and now very much out of favor. My breakout players are Jackson Yule, who has really mastered that number 8 spot, and has just come on and showed his endurance, showed his passing ability, shown his passion, his thirst for playing in that role. Very hard position to play.
Europe quality, according to Matías, by the way.
Mind you. And Cummings. I don't think you always saw the best out of Cummings at that center back spot. But at that height, at that physicality, at that weight, a lad that will make that crunching challenge, who's good in the air, but to see him play out of the back, the way he plays for this team is truly a really remarkable sight that Matías Almeyda has been able to do the work with Cummings and pair him effectively, with another center back partner. So those two are my outstanding overachievers. Yeah.
One last comment I want to make. Honorable mention, Tommy Thompson. I won't elaborate on it, but he was, told to play this new position, and I think so far he's done an above-average job.
Yep.
So let's move on to RFL Reader 06's question, which would be, who do you believe will be the breakout player over the next weeks? Salinas had a good May. Vako had a great July.
Well, I think the pressure's on Vako, right? He needs to continue the form that he's currently experiencing. Saw the Quakes PR team put out, media team put out that comparison, of Vako and George Best. I think is a bit.
Yep.
Bit.
I mean, come on.
I mean, it's a bit of blasphemy, to be honest with you, because George Best is one of the best has ever played the game.
Right, but it's a fun clip.
It's
a
fun
clip.
It's a great
and that's
clip.
the idea.
He had a very Best-like goal last season,
He did.
too.
No, right. I mean, there's moments where you're just like, wow, that was very messy.
He made Atlanta look like childish.
Right. But I mean, the pressure's on. Vako needs to continue on in that path that he's in right now. So I think, to answer your question, it has to be Vako.
He needs to continue, absolutely. I think that someone else is going to step up here. I think Matías has shown us the ability to be able to figure out who the right people are in the right moments. I think it's going to be someone like an Eriksson. I think it's going to be someone like a Yule, but someone's going to step up that we don't expect. We haven't seen really shine, and I think
Lima?
over the next 2-3 weeks, it could be. I think it's just going to be somebody different. Huson got his chance last game. He didn't do much with
Spoiled.
it. Okay, and I was the Huson guy
Spoiled,
earlier in the season, right?
The opportunity.
No, I'll be the Husin guy this time.
So
I'm just going to do it.
there you
I'm
go.
just going to do it.
There you go.
Husen hasn't looked
I'm
good in
gonna
a
do-
while.
you know what
The
gotta be
great
the
thing
Huson
about
guy.
To be
picking
honest.
everybody is whoever it is, we're going to be correct. That's the fun part.
Okay. Why doesn't someone just pick the goalkeeper already? Let's be honest here, okay? Alrighty. Moving on to our next question from Moy Seta. With Godoy going to Nashville in 2020, how does it affect whom we protect in the expansion draft?
Oh, wow.
We actually got
Kind
this
of like a
question
very
earlier today.
technical-ish
we-
type of, yeah.
We got this question. Jamin and I got this question earlier, and it took some time, right?
Yeah,
It took
to
about
really
10 minutes.
Kind of think through everything.
I don't think
We
we
got
want
10 minutes.
I don't think we want to take up that much airspace.
I think this is a good special topic for another show. Can
Yeah.
we hold this one, Charles?
Because I mean,
We're
it's
gonna hold
11
this one.
players. It's 11 players,
is.
and I think the question is more suitable towards the end of the year. 'Cause we
Right.
don't know what's really going to happen from now to then. So
Yeah, and the thing I think you have to ask yourself is Nashville got the Quakes player that they wanted, Anibal Godoy.
they're probably not going
They're
to
probably
select.
not.
any
If they
other
wanted
Quakes.
somebody else, they've already gotten 2 Quakes players. They probably shouldn't negotiate it
behind
right
closed doors,
Right.
nice little
Absolutely,
handshake.
handshakes.
Right, and Mike,
Handshakes behind closed
Done.
doors.
and so that answers Mike Kleinman's question. And Mike wrote, "Do you think that there was a possibility a handshake agreement between the clubs that Nashville promises
Absolutely.
not to draft a Quakes player in the expansion draft?" He
These things
says
do
yes.
happen.
He
These
says
things
yes.
do happen.
I'm just gonna say yes.
Speculation, but
These things do
it's
happen.
Speculative.
MLS. It's MLS. That's all
Handshake
I have to
agreements
say.
happen all the time. By the way, remember everyone who was burnt over Latif Blessing going to LAFC because they thought they had a handshake agreement.
There you go.
2 more questions left here. Daniel Zohar with Espinoza out. Are we going to see Wando play with Danny? I think I'm going to help rephrase it in just a weird way. Will you see Wando ever play with Danny? Is the question. I don't know if you'll see someone on one of those two on the wing, but you never know.
Yeah. So Danny was an option. He actually, I'm not sure if it was obvious if people were just watching on TV or not on Saturday, but he was an option in the second half, and he played the right wing when Wando came on the pitch.
Right.
Yeah.
We have seen him in that position before. He was actually used back in 2017 a bit as a
Under
target,
Kinnear.
under Kinnear as a target winger.
Yeah, I remember that on the right side.
And they would play long balls over there.
Yeah, I
and
remember that.
The not very often used target winger, Charles. You could probably talk about the history of that for us. But that being the situation, I think it depends on if Fierro is ready to go or not. The good chances that if Salinas is starting and Matías does not feel that Fierro is ready yet, I think Huson is basically the backup winger, to be quite honest, for this weekend.
Well, like I did mention earlier, Almeyda did hint that Fierro might travel with the team, which means he's probably going to make his way into the 18. Whether he's able to give 15 or 20 minutes at that elevation, I'm not sure. Although Mexico and Guadalajara, the elevation is really high, so
Yeah.
I don't think he would struggle on that end. But not sure, to be honest with you. In that case, Huson would be the second option as a winger.
Absolutely.
Yeah, do you see Fierro and or Rios subbing or starting against Colorado? Again, from Esteban Quesada, asking all the good questions tonight. We'll have to see if
Not
if
starting,
either
for
not
sure.
starting.
Definitely not starting.
I don't
and
think-
Maybe traveling.
And almost definitely not Rios.
Yeah, not Rios. Like I said, Fierro might travel. Yeah.
Well, we are at episode 25, the quarter century episode. Hopefully we make it to episode 50. If we do, that means the Quakes are probably in MLS Cup. But you never know. You never, ever know. We'll take one last question, it looks like, because Joel wanted to answer this one before we came off air.
This one right here.
Yeah, Guaranuto writes, hey guys, a random question, but have never found the answers. What happened with the Avaya naming rights? Weren't they going to stop after last season due to getting out of their contract?
No. Avaya is actually a 5-year agreement, and the company still exists, right?
Yeah, it's a tough question. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to address it. From my understanding, the name Avaya just is up there just to have some sort of sponsor. There's no legitimacy to the agreement, to the sponsor whatsoever. So, like I said, to clear things up, to paraphrase here, I don't think the Quakes are getting any money out of this. I think they solely just have Avaya's title up there just so they can, promote it, I guess, in a way, just to say, hey, like we're not, this isn't Earthquake Stadium, this is Avaya Stadium. Give it some sort of legitimacy. That's to my understanding.
What I saw is that the jersey sponsorship was what it was, right? That sponsorship ran out. The Avaya sponsorship, I tried to dig into this in the off season a bit, and I can't remember exactly where I found it, but I read somewhere that it was actually a 5-year agreement. It was back around the time that it was signed. I think what people are confusing a little bit here is that they filed for bankruptcy, but they're still a company.
They're still a company, correct?
Right? But if the agreement is 5 years and they're still a company, there's really no reason at this point to change the stadium naming rights.
Right, but did the bankruptcy influence the contract that they had signed?
It may be that whatever
They
they
lost
were going to
funds
get paid,
for that.
yeah, maybe whatever they're going to get paid, they got paid, and they may not be able to get any more funds. That's a different question.
Right.
But in terms of the naming sponsorship, it was intended to be a 5-year deal.
Correct.
That sounds like an 1,000 or maybe 2,000 word article, potentially, that all three of us, 4 of us, could potentially research for further down the line. Again, this is Black and Azul. Make sure that you like, you subscribe, and you tell a friend about us. And remember, I say it a lot, and I'm going to say it again, tell a friend to tell a friend about this, and then tell that friend to tell a friend about us. You see how we're cascading it. Tell 2 people to tell 2 people. That's how we increase our viewership.
You're a broken record.
Our associate producer is Aaron Sholl. Our executive director and producer is Jason Sholl. Alex Morgan on the show tonight. Jamin Moore, Joel Soria, Charles Wollin. Alex, come on out here.
Alex. We only have another microphone, but come on in anyway.
He's right here. Anyway, we are Black and Azul. Thank you so much for tuning in. Crouch down a little bit. There he is. There he is. We're Black and Azul, coming to you, giving you some Quakes content week in, week out, web series. Sometimes we do some post-game shows as well. You can follow us.
Special interview.
Yeah, special interview coming up.
Absolutely.
As well. We'll keep you notified.
That's why we started late.
On that too. And you can find us on Twitter at Black and Azul. And then you can also find us on Facebook and Instagram and right here as you guys are watching. So thank you so much for tuning in, helping to grow the game of soccer in this country, the United States of America, by tuning into this broadcast. That is exactly what you do. Cheers, and thanks for making your community a better place. Good night.